Hi there, I'm Douglas Barnhart, and my story begins kind of young for my age and dark early. It started when I moved from a small town of Indiana to Louisville, Kentucky. I had two groups. There was a small young group and an older group. I quickly began to hang out with the young group first because that was my age group, but they were already involved with dabbling and experimenting with drugs pretty heavily. And there was an older group. Well, I didn't really care for the young group, so I ended up hanging out with the older group. And then I learned that once I had kids, third grade, you shouldn't be doing what 21-year-olds are doing. And that's precisely what I was doing. But that is when I started my drug problem, and it started me using drugs pretty heavily at a young age and being real experimental, and I had no fear whatsoever. And when I did something, I usually was gung-ho, balls to the wall with it. And unfortunately, that was what I did. Then in my teens, I lost my dad, which was real traumatizing to me. I didn't know what to do with that pain and grief at the time. And that's when drugs went from recreation to abuse for me. I had a real hard time with dealing with that grief. I shortly after that found drugs, IV use of drugs, and that was when things really get turned dark for me. Shortly after that, I was 32, I guess. In 2016, I had a near fatal car accident. It left me with 26 broken bones, a stroke, a traumatic brain injury, missing half my skull, waking up on a feeding tube and a trach. And once I got on my feet after that, I was about a year in a wheelchair. Had to go to a funeral as my friend of mine's mom had passed away. And I ran into my friend Jamie McGregor, which you all know here. And he invited me to a church, man. And the last time I had seen this guy, he was in the darkness himself. And I saw the joy and the absolute spirit in this man's life. And I wanted that. It was something I truly wanted. And he invited me to church. And after all the times I've been invited to church in my life, I'd always said no. And this time I felt the need to say yes. And it was to here at Farmdale Church. And it was the best decision I ever made coming to this church. And I won't see myself going to any other church ever again. I love this little church. And thank you, Jamie. Once I got into church, I was led by some certain men to get into reading the Romans and redemption. And when I was able to read in redemption, it led me to really have a lot of forgiveness and let go of a lot of guilt and shame I had on myself on things I did through my addiction. And I hurt a lot of people and caused a lot of grief through my addiction to people, and I hate that. And it's something I have a hard struggle with still today. But I know through Jesus Christ I'm forgiven, and I'm just so grateful for that and for Jesus Christ and my relationship with Him today. Thank you, Lord.